Since the release of the iPhone 12, a lot has changed, and now I'm here to tell you if this phone is worth buying in 2023. On paper, 100% worth it, and is actually a pretty good deal. But in practice, it might be worth skipping. Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and let's just keep the video going. Now this phone is where Apple turned around. They made cut corner phones like the iPhone 5C, and then paused that side until the iPhone XR. People got the idea that numbered phones are good, weird names are bad, so Apple made the sequel to the iPhone XR become the iPhone 11, moving premium iPhones into the Pro name. But then they came out with the iPhone 12, which redeemed that naming scheme. Now, I'm one of the very few, but also part of a very large group that believes premium compact phones are amazing. No, not the SE, I'm talking about the iPhone 12 mini and 13 mini. Apple dropped the $700 mini in favor for a highly demanded $900 iPhone 14 Plus. Did people really think that they were going to make a cheaper phone? Why does anyone pay $900 for that phone when a 14 Pro is $100 more? But the iPhone 12 is the phone that Apple should have made a while ago. No longer do we get the screen pixel density of the iPhone 4, yes, the iPhone 4 that plagued the iPhone XR and the iPhone 11, but instead an OLED display. This 6.1-inch OLED panel not only gets boosted to a 1080p plus display, but also gets HDR support, just like the Pro model iPhone. It's a flat panel too, so screen protectors will actually protect. Being a non-Pro, this does have a 60Hz display, but 120Hz wouldn't be a thing on iPhones until the next model, and even then, only on the Pro models. So 60Hz isn't that bad. This moves from a pixel density of 326 pixels per inch to 460, which is higher than most Android phones in this size. Honestly, now that I think about it, everything that I'm going to be talking about besides the refresh rate is outstanding. However, there are some bad things that we will have to talk about. But first, let me explain what this phone comes with and how that makes things just work. Starting with the outside, the front has a ceramic shield, making it less likely to break, though scratching becomes super easy. For example, this screen that you're seeing has been replaced. On the top, we do get a notch, which houses the Face ID unit and earpiece. So no fingerprint, which is pretty normal for an iPhone nowadays, but the earpiece also pairs with the bottom loudspeaker and does a good job at giving that stereo feel. That said, these earpieces are pretty easy to get dirty and actually have some issues. Moving to the frame, we got nothing on the top, while the right side is where the side button is, which is used for Siri and Apple Pay. And no, you're not special for having Apple Pay, something that's been around since the iPhone 6. It's just tap to pay, something that the Google Nexus S had. Yeah, look it up. The left side is where the silent rocker and volume buttons are, standard Apple phone. The bottom is where you get the loudspeaker and some microphones, while the middle is where the lightning charging port is. Yes, it is USB 2.0, and it also allows for 22 watts of wired charging according to sources online, though I believe the true number is about 18 or 20 watts. Moving to the back, we have the glass back, which Apple technically doesn't say if it's ceramic shield or not, but that would explain why they crack really easily. With that said, it might actually just be the people that use them. Moving into the phone, we get MagSafe wireless charging, so you could do this. It charges at 15 watts max, so pretty decent charging speeds, but the phone does warm up a little bit. As for sealing the phone, it is IP68 dust and water resistant, but as the phone gets older, that statement gets taken with more grains of rice. As for the performance of the phone, we get the Apple A14 Bionic chip, which even now is overkill for most people. There's little to no waiting for opening up apps and using them, and game performance is spectacular. The way this chip is made, it handles iOS 16 with little to no problems and should stay the same until at least iOS 19, if not longer. To power this chip, we get an unknown battery capacity, according to Apple. This is a 2,815 mAh cell, or 10.78 watt hours. Overall, it lasts all day and should be good for most people. This one has an 87% battery capacity, but has a pretty decent amount of charge cycles and should be replaced soon. Of course, I can't do that because Apple will be yelling at me for not using an Apple part, or even if I do use an Apple part, they'll still say that I did it wrong. Only Apple can fix this unless I pay extra for the self-service program. Sorry, I'm spilling into the bad already. Lastly, we get 64, 128, or 256 gigabytes of storage in this phone, with probably 90% of these phones coming with 64 gigabytes. If you ever are going to buy a phone new, especially at this price, don't buy the base model. One thing I love about this phone's size is even though it shares a lot of the same parts as the iPhone 12 Pro, like the screen, battery, charging port, antennas, and so on, it still manages to keep a light weight of 164 grams. The cameras, I think they get their own section, even though they're the last part of the hardware. While just showing you pictures will explain this phone, I gotta let you know what cameras you get on this phone. There are 3 cameras, and they're all 12 megapixels, with one being optically stabilized and focusable. And that's the end of this section. Okay, I'm kidding, but the cameras are standard for iPhones and pretty close to what you would get on the iPhone 11. We have a 12 megapixel standard and ultra wide on the back, both complementing and matching in shots and capabilities. There's no optical zoom and no macro modes, which the latter wouldn't be a thing until the iPhone 13 Pro, and the former technically on the iPhone 14 Pros. Still, we get some wonderful shots that work for everything that you throw at it. As for video capture, we get a max of 4K 60 frames per second out of both cameras, but switching while recording is only at 30 frames per second or lower. And that's not really that bad because that's what the iPhone 14 Pro does. If you watch my recent 13 Pro review that I did, most of that was filmed on the iPhone 12 mini. So you can already see how this is a pretty good video camera. Moving to the front, we get the fixed focus 12 megapixel selfie camera, which looks good and supports 4K at 60 frames per second video. I can't really lie to you and say that Apple needs to do better because ever since the iPhone 10, Apple has done really well with the front camera, even though it's not focusable. But let me show you some more shots that I did. Enjoy. Now for me, I shoot 4K 60 frames per second video, and I don't really take selfies, except for these reviews. I like being able to zoom, but also enjoy the challenge when reviewing a phone that can't zoom. I also really don't care about the ultra-wide sensor. So I'm going to go over a short list of what this phone can do, but know that I don't really have examples for these. You can capture HDR video, but only at 4K 30 frames per second, as well as having the option for 24 frames per second. Slow motion can be captured on all the cameras at 1080p up to 240 frames per second, but the front one maxes out at 120 frames per second. Okay, I guess that's not really too many gimmicks, but I am more of a point and shoot guy, while you might be the type of person that enjoys those other features. And finally, we reach the end, the bad. Now this isn't iPhone 11 bad in the sense that you would think, but they both share a common issue, and that is longevity. iPhone 11s are known for just dying out of nowhere, normally being a battery issue. Apple should really start a replacement program on that phone, but instead they chose a screen program, so that means that they're probably never going to do anything with the battery. Instead, problem one is the earpiece. While Apple is fixing this issue, this is an inconvenience and even happens on the iPhone 11 Pros, but Apple will never recall those phones. The next things, well, they just don't actually do recalls for those. Related to the earpiece is that the cable attached will fail due to usage, liquid, or improper damage from a repair, and it may cause the screen to either go blank or show up extremely dim. However, it could also be board damage. But the way that this looks, it's something that doesn't happen on any phones prior to the 12 series, as far as I've seen. The other major issue that happens from damage or not is a failed baseband. Now, this isn't new with Apple. I mean, they recalled the Verizon iPhone 7s, though the iPhone 7 Plus has the exact same chip and should fail, but also happens on the iPhone XR, 11, 12, 12 Pro Max, 13, and 13 Pro Max. Maybe the sample size is small, no pun intended, but I don't really see this happening on the minis, but also on the normal size Pro phones. And if you're wondering, the baseband controls the cellular connection on your phone, and when it fails, the phone will just tell you you need to update your phone. Well, doing so, or restoring your phone, renders your phone useless, pushing you into this update loop forever, or at least until you get the baseband fixed. Apple just replaces the phone for $449, or about $100 plus more than the phone is actually worth used. Nice. Now the bad I would say is pretty bad, but also kind of avoidable. Take care of your phone and you should be fine, but understand that weird stuff like that can happen even if you do take care of it. Luckily, Apple will replace the earpiece within 3 years of the phone's purchase date, so even now every iPhone 12 that they sold is covered even if it is out of warranty. But these failures are shared on a decent amount of iPhones, so the bad isn't really specific to the iPhone 12. The rest of the phone is perfect for the price. I expected to see the iPhone 12 price closer to the iPhone 13 series, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that the iPhone 12 is in the low $300 area, while the 13s are still in the high 400s, making the 12 actually a pretty good price for what you get. I think the 13 Pro is the best iPhone to buy right now for the price, but it's literally double the price of the iPhone 12. With that said, I think the iPhone 12 mini is a true gem, but for those that want a compact phone and don't want a phone that small, the iPhone 12 is your go-to on the Apple side. With all that said, I am glad to stop using this phone and go back to reviewing some Android phones. And that's it for my review of the iPhone 12, the benchmark for good iPhones. But what do you think? Is the iPhone 12 overrated? Let me know what you think, and as always, thanks for watching.